Hey Amarillo, I'm Jason Boyette, and you're listening to Hey Amarillo, the interview podcast featuring some of the most interesting people and stories of Amarillo, Texas. This week's episode is sponsored by SKP Creative, and the team there asked me to talk about the Amarillo Tribune. If you haven't heard, the Tribune is a new local journalism project, and I happen to be a founding board member. The Amarillo Tribune is Amarillo's first community-supported, nonprofit, digital-only news organization. It's free public service journalism about Amarillo in this area. My friend Jackie Kingston is the CEO and executive editor, and she's built up a really strong news team for this daily publication. They're providing local coverage about issues we care about. I'm not writing for the Tribune. I'm just a board member. I'm on the nonprofit side of things, helping approve budgets and all that kind of stuff. But I'm super excited about this project, and I hope you'll support it. So you can learn more by visiting amarillotribune.org. You can sign up for a weekly newsletter. You can read the articles there, amarillotribune.org, and thanks to SKP Creative for the support. As part of this podcast partnership with Brick and Elm Magazine, I want to give a podcast shout out to Leslie Massey, Farmers Insurance, Texas Tech Physicians Pediatrics, and West Texas A&M University. The new September-October issue of Brick and Elm is at the printer now. It should be out by September 1st. It's a really, really fun issue. Today's guest is J. Pat Hickman. Pat is the founder of Happy State Bank. He led a group of investors in 1990 to purchase what was then a very small bank with just $10 million in deposits. He then served for 32 years as the chairman, president, and CEO of Happy State before selling it in 2022 when it had grown to be one of the largest banks in the state. I definitely wanted to hear that origin story, but also about some of the things Pat has been involved with since his retirement. And that includes going back to Texas Tech University to take classes, undergraduate classes, so he could finish his bachelor's degree as a successful and retired banker. I think that's really cool. Here's Pat Hickman. Pat Hickman, welcome to the Hey Amarillo podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jason. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I want to start with you the same way I start with all my guests, and that's just to ask why you're here in this area. So what brought you to the Texas Panhandle, to Amarillo Canyon in the first place?
I won the lottery when I was born to a couple named Bud and Mildred Hickman, who had moved here in the mid-1930s.
Okay.
And neatest parents in the world. But loved them. They loved me. Thank you, Lord, that they moved here.
What brought them here?
My dad's father, kind of a rambling man, and went from Missouri to Lone Oak, Arkansas, and then here chasing cheap land and farming. I have since traveled back to Lone Oak and to the area outside of St. Louis and said, and even before that, a great-great-great-grandfather in Kentucky. And I've looked at those lush green areas and said, what were y'all thinking? Yeah. What's this deal? But, you know, it's the people here that make it, and we love it. We love it. It's home. I married a girl from Amarillo, and we love it here. We're blessed that 3 of our 4 children live here. So we're here. We're here for good.
What part of the Panhandle, where did you grow up?
Canyon.
Okay, Canyon.
Born and reared.
Okay.
Born and reared. The last place in the world I thought I would come back to. Came back kind of on a fluke. Was selling insurance, believe it or not.
All right.
And an agency needed some help, and my company talked me into moving, bribed me into moving is a better way to say it. And I came back, and it was a horrible job. Horrible. And one of those deals where I quit, they fired me, all the same stuff. Walked out of there mad on a Friday morning and walked into a little clothing store in Canyon, downtown Canyon, where Palace Coffee is today. It was a little clothing store. And saw the most beautiful brunette I'd ever seen in my life. And thank goodness 16 months later, she married me, and the rest is history.
Were you, did you have an intention of coming back to Canyon after high school?
No. I thought big city was where I needed to be. I was a marketing major originally. I enjoyed working with advertising and stuff like that. And, I saw myself being some PR guy, marketing guy for some company somewhere. I always had a dream to be an entrepreneur, but no, Canyon is not where it was going to happen.
Okay,
the last place in the world, and had I not met Nancy, I don't know that I would have stayed. But it just happened. We got married it took us 5 years before we started having children. We just loved it. And you couldn't make us move today. We absolutely love it here.
After you met Nancy, was kind of some frustration with your career. Like what happened right after that? Did you?
Well, actually, I enrolled at WT just to hustle her.
Okay.
And it worked, obviously. She's 5 years younger than I am. I was 23. She was 18. And I enrolled in WT to hustle her and got a job working at a small little credit union here in Amarillo. Back then, the Santa Fe Credit Union is one, but back then, in the mid 80s, there were 3 credit unions just for Santa Fe employees. There were so many employees here, and I worked for one of those. It was teensy. These 2 ladies hired me because they liked my smile and I could type. That's how I got the job. That job, it's crazy, the providential hand of God, how it works. I don't believe in accidents. My old Boy Scout troop. I was an Eagle Scout in Canyon, and my old Boy Scout troop, a couple of dads looked me up and said, man, Pat, our Boy Scout troop has just fallen apart. Man, when I was a part of it, we had phenomenal adult leaders, 60, 80 kids, boys that were in the troop. And so I went and visited one night, and they had like 6 boys. So I did. Like a crazy idiot, I took over at 23 years old as their Boy Scout master. Another good friend, guy named Dan McGlasson, was a few years younger than me. I talked him into being my assistant scoutmaster. We built that troop up to about 100 kids.
Wow.
And it was doing great. But the Canyon flood happened in 1978. Mm-hmm. And my Boy Scout troop ended up helping clean up the Huntsville Hills area that was hit hardest in Canyon. All of a sudden, I got put in charge of the flood cleanup. Just because I was a volunteer and I had hands to do it.
By the city? The city said here?
The mayor was a friend. My mom actually worked for the mayor, and he came down and said, Pat, what do you need? I said, Mayor, we need dump trucks, we need front end loaders, we need, He goes, I'll get you that. What else do you need? And the local grocery store came down and set up a tent on a vacant lot. And we're just cooking food over an open fire. Mm-hmm. And a local grocery store, Taylor & Sons grocery store, sent a refrigerator truck down to provide food free for everybody who needed it. Long and short, I'm getting way ahead of myself. The First National Bank in Canyon, which is now Wells Fargo, bought them several years later, they needed a marketing director. And there were 2 guys that owned the bank, Don Max Vars, who's still a friend, and David West, who's gone on to be with the Lord. But the 2 of them, David's home was in the flood. And because he saw me leading my Boy Scout troop, mm-hmm. with Don Max's suggestion, they hired me to be their marketing director, and that's how I got into banking. Loved it.
Did you know you had like a leadership capability before that? I mean, was that something that was natural for you?
I took leadership courses as a Boy Scout leader, as a Boy Scout, as a young kid. Yeah, leadership was one of those things that I loved. It came naturally, and a talent that the good Lord blessed me with. Anyway, that's how I fell into banking.
Okay.
And never thought it was a career. And then when I was about 35, one day I came home. We had 3 kids, I guess, by then. And I told Nancy, I said, I think this is my career. I think this is what I want to do. In fact, I want to run a bank someday. And 2 years later, I was working for First National Bank Amarillo, but very, very disgruntled through various things.
There's a lot happening in the banking world at that time.
Yeah.
Like a lot of turnover.
I'll put it this is the best statistic I can give people to understand how bad it was in 1988, 87, 89. In 2008-9, the last financial crisis, mm-hmm. there were 156 banks that failed nationwide. In 1988 and 1989, 304 banks failed in Texas.
Wow.
So double what happened in 2008 in one state.
Yeah.
It was horrible. Real estate, oil and gas, everything fell apart. and I heard the bank in Happy, Texas was for sale. My net worth was a whopping $3,700. My wife was pregnant with our fourth child. And we were sitting around drinking a beer one day after work with Ross Glenn. Ross worked with me, and he knew how disgruntled I was. And born and reared in Canyon, I didn't know there was a bank in Happy. Mm-hmm. And I said, is there a bank down there? He said, yeah, I kind of think there is. We went and looked it up. Yeah, a little $10 million bank, 6 employees, teensy. There were 880 banks in Texas, and this was the 812th smallest bank. Okay, there were only 70 or so banks that
were.
For
people that don't know, when you say a $10 million bank, like those are the assets under management, right?
Yeah. Deposits.
Yeah.
Right. It sounds $10 million. Oh, no, that's teensy.
Yeah.
That's teensy. In one day, I heard the bank was for sale. In the morning, 2 of my very good customers came in, and I happened to be talking to them simultaneously, told them about it. They both said, Pat, if you're running it, we'll invest. And that afternoon, I was drinking coffee at the McDonald's in Canyon with the owner of the bank. Wow. And I went home that night. I said, honey, I think we might be buying a bank. I need to quit my job. We're going to have to sell the house. Well, because we're going to live off of our equity. And good news is that bank presidents of $10 million banks make about $20,000 a year less than what I'm making today. and she, I still tear up a little bit when I tell this. She looked at me. Here she's 6 months pregnant, 4th child, and she said, honey, you've always taken care of me. I trust you. Let's go.
I want to talk about that decision because you knew that you liked banking. You were on the marketing side of banking. I know a lot of people that do marketing. I mean, that's my world. And people that do marketing for banks, like I'm trying to imagine any of them saying, I want to own and manage my own bank. I can't think of anybody who would say that because it's complicated. There's a lot of pressure. Like it's so different from marketing.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Regulations, like all the details that feels different from, hey, let's make a nice ad to advertise our bank.
I was egotistical, I think is the word, egotistical enough to say, I can lead it and I can find really good people that can do those things and can take care of me. I figured out real quickly that where money is made in banking, especially community banking, is on the loan side. And so I knew I've got to become a lender. I've got to get in and learn how to loan money, the things involved in that. And so started working toward that end and had, again, by the providential hand of God, a couple other jobs opened up, different banks where I got to go in and learn the basics of lending. I knew I had to hire a really good operations person. There were going to be those specialties that I needed. I needed good, strong lenders. And Ross came over with me not long after we got going. Gary Wells, and the whole city of Amarillo knows Gary. Gary and I had worked together at First National Amarillo, and he had ended up down in Dallas. Grew up in Dumas, and he called me and he said, man, Hick, I heard you have this little bank. We want to come back home. You need a loan officer? And Gary is a superstar. And I said, are you kidding? Yes, come on. Well, that was a golden hire. Gary and Ross were still with me when we sold the bank. Those things fell into place. And sure enough, I used to say this about myself when people would ask about my career. I would say, look, I think I'm a little better than average banker. I think I'm an okay lender. I know zero about operations, but I can hire that. But I'm a damn good people person. And I hire damn good people and get out of their way and let them run their departments. I'll guide, I'll direct, I can make sure that we're working cohesively as a team. And we did. And it was magic.
Well, and being a people person, banking in the Texas Panhandle is driven by relationships. Like it's less about the economics or fees or rates. So much of it is just, this is my guy. He knows me. She knows me. We know how to work together. And that's what drives a lot of that.
That's right. All those other things are important. You need to understand the basics, and it is a complicated business. There are so many balls that have to be juggled, especially with the regulations that we have today. But it really does come down to relationships. And I think the biggest one is don't ever forget it's other people's money.
Yeah.
OPM, as we called it, and treat every person like they have $1 million in your bank. Now, we'll discriminate. The more money you keep in the bank, the higher rate we pay you on your deposits, the lower rate we charge you on your loans. But we're not going to treat you any different. We're never going to forget it's your money. You trusted us with your money. We are going to treat you with the utmost respect and give you the over the top service. That was what we did.
Tell me how it grew. So, because I know that's a struggle for a lot of businesses, even businesses that are successful, because you don't want to outgrow the personality, the character, that brings people to your tiny little bank in Happy, Texas.
Yeah.
And so, by the time it sold, it was not just in Happy, Texas. It was all over the Panhandle, a lot of parts of the state, right?
Well, I told you a while ago we were the 812th in the state. When we sold it, we were the 17th in the state. We passed those other 800 banks over the next 30 years. And as I love to tell my buddies down in Houston and Dallas, we did most of that up here where cows outnumber people 300,000 to 1. We didn't do it on I-35. I mean, because I grew up in Canyon. And when we bought the bank, our first move was to open a branch in Canyon. Our first day, we opened 198 new accounts. We bought a $10 million bank. In 1 month, we were a $17 million bank. In 4 months, we were a $30 million bank. So we just exploded.
Why was that? Was there a pent-up demand in Canyon? Like, what do you attribute that to?
I think there were 2 banks in town at that time, and they were both larger conglomerate type banks that just weren't taking care of the folks.
Okay.
And my reputation, and Ross's reputation, my directors. I'm going to tell you, I had 11 local directors that were all extremely well respected, and I know that had a huge impact on it as well. We opened our first branch in Amarillo, if I remember right, about 95 or 6. We built our first building in Canyon in 95. We took off rapidly. It took us 9 years to hit 100 million, which that's a huge milestone in banking. Just a few years later, we hit $1 billion. I mean, we started buying some banks, but 70% of our growth was organic. We bought quite a few, but 70% of our business was people choosing to bank with us, coming to us saying, I want to move my business to you. I hired great people. I hired the best people in the world. Sad part is many of them have scattered now to other banks here in town, and which is good for them. And I've had several former competitors say, "Man, Pat, the folks you hired, wow, your team, wow, they were stellar."
Growing like that, was it hard to maintain the values that you wanted Happy to have? I mean, that's always something you have to balance out with growth. Can you grow without losing what drew people to you in the first place?
We did. We were named 4 years in a row one of the best top 100 businesses in Texas 4 years in a row by Texas Monthly. Then the American Banker started saying, how about we're going to have the top 100 places to work, banks to work in the country. We were named to that list 8 years in a row. The last 12 years that I ran the bank, we received those accolades. And Forbes magazine, Forbes did a national survey. We had no idea. We didn't apply for it. It just we were named the 3rd best bank in Texas in 2019 by Forbes. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. My son-in-law, my wife and I were out of town, and my son-in-law called me about midnight, and he said, "Did you know Forbes just rated the bank the 3rd best bank in Texas?" I went, "What? Are you kidding?" No. Anyway, he sent me the stuff. But it was those values. A book was written about us. Sam Silverstein wrote a great book called "Non-Negotiable: The Values of Happy Bank." We didn't have a meeting that we didn't go over one of our values and talk about it. It was a constant push.
I want to talk about this area, the people here.
Sure.
Because one of the things that I think is an important part of this story locally is that we do have very strong homegrown local banks. Like Wells Fargo struggled to get a foothold here. Chase has struggled to get a foothold here, but Happy was huge. A&B is huge. First Bank Southwest is very successful. Those are local, community-focused banks. First United. Why is that a thing here in the Texas Panhandle?
I think we share values. One, work ethic. Talk to any employer. National employers love hiring kids that graduate from West Texas A&M and Texas Tech. South Plains or Wayland, any of these colleges around here, the work ethic, I think a lot of it comes even from the still rural nature.
Yeah.
Trust, very much a piece of rural America. Trust and character is integrity. If we ever heard that one of our employees was talking about a customer's business outside of the bank, there was not a warning. You were fired.
Wow. Okay.
And everyone knew that. If they'll talk about their business outside of the bank, they'll talk about your business outside of the bank. I'll never forget one time years ago, in the mid '80s, there were a lot of tax advantages to cattle feeding. And the First National Amarillo, their customer list looked like the who's who of Nashville. Willie Nelson banked at First Amarillo with a cattle loan, and I got to be his loan officer. Had his financial statement. One day I was walking through the credit department. I looked over, and a bunch of credit ants were over there. Oh, wow, look at this, look at this. And I walked over and said, what are y'all doing? And they said, oh, here's Willie's financial statement. And I said, guys, you ought to, every one of you, be fired unless you're supposed to be looking for that, unless you have a reason to be looking at that. You do not. The next time you're sitting in a bar and Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain comes on the radio, you're going to want to say, do you know how much money Willie makes?
Yeah.
He deserves the same protection as any other customer that we have. So I think those values, that's Texas Panhandle.
How did you know it was time to sell?
I didn't. I hated it. I didn't want to. My board, it was a board-driven decision. I went along with it. Upon my exit, there were some changes.
Yeah. It was a rocky transition, at least from my perspective, and that's from outside the situation.
It was messy, I think is a word that you can use. But I did not want to sell, but I also didn't want to get back in.
Okay.
Had they asked, I would have, but they didn't ask. Nor do I think they wanted to ask. There was just some lost dynamics in there. But no, it was tough. And I think we found a great bank. Had Centennial Home Bank shares not come along, I'm not sure we would have sold to anyone. They are a different bank. Their emphasis is on running a really rock solid bank, and I'm telling you, it is one of the most solid. I'm still on their board. I went on their board. I go to Conway, Arkansas, four times a year to be at their board meetings. They're a rock solid bank, and as far as that goes, we picked a great team to come behind us.
But personally, that's a hard transition. Because that was your identity for what?
32 years.
Yeah,
32 years. My family's identity in a lot of ways. I think it was hard on the family, but the relationships that I have with every one of those employees, stockholders, the stock of the company is doing great right now. And I'm getting phone calls from stockholders going, Pat, you're still taking great care of us. That's the best investment I ever made. That's her. But those friends I made, I'm going to see those friends for eternity. Mm-hmm. Happy won't be going to heaven with me.
Can't take it with you. Right?
Yeah. It ended, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. I can't tell you how many employees have said, Pat, those memories will last with us all forever. We love that time. We love the bank.
Talk to me about retirement. Some people are ready for retirement. Some people embrace it. Some people are not good at it. What's it been like for you?
Mixed. That one crazy part that added to the sale of the bank is little did we realize, I turned the bank over in May of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. 3 weeks later, the new CEO says, we've got to close our doors because of COVID. I mean, it just, the whole world turned upside down. Was that providential? Absolutely. It really kind of helped my transition. Everybody was at home anyway.
Yeah.
So I was at home. I needed something to do. 8 years ago, I was put on the Texas Tech Foundation board. And 4 years ago, I was at a dinner one night with the president of the university. They happened to seat he and I at the same table. And he said, Pat, did I hear correctly that you never graduated from college? And I said, yes, sir, that's true. I'm kind of embarrassed about it. It's the only thing in my life I started that I didn't finish. And he said, well, we want to give you an honorary degree. And I said, well, that's very kind, but no, sir, I'm not interested. I have no desire to get an honorary degree, but I would like to earn one. And he kind of leaned back and said, really? And I said, yes, sir, I really would. He said, I'll have somebody call you Monday. And sure enough, they did. I said, I don't care what the degree is in. I don't care basket weaving. Give me the shortest route to get out of here. And I obviously would like to do most of it, if not all of it, remotely via the internet. And they had a degree program that was just a year old called Applied Personal Finance.
Okay.
And so it worked out just beautifully. And just a couple of 3 months ago, mid-May, I walked.
Yeah.
Texas Tech was very, very kind to us. The Health Science Center let us have their suite. All 18 of my grandbabies, all 4 of my children and their spouses, my bride, of course, they gave us a suite for all 27 of my family members to be there. Dr. Skuvenik, during the ceremony, had me stand up and said some very nice words and, complimented me and got a round of applause, all that stuff. I mean, and believe it or not, in my major, I was named the outstanding senior in my major. Of course, when I received the award, I said, I really kind of bring a double meaning to the word senior.
They were taking it very literally.
Yes.
How many hours did you still have to make up?
41.
Okay.
Which was
about 3 semesters or so.
3 normal semesters.
Right.
I'm doing 6 hours per session. It was, I thought I only liked like 17. I didn't know that over the years, a lot of those courses I took are now obsolete, and therefore
they don't transfer.
They don't. Well, so gosh, it was more than double what I thought. But I'm really glad I did that. And the thing I'm concentrating on now is I am trying to write a book.
Okay.
The name of it goes along with what I've said about the providential hand of God. The name of the book is "It Ain't an Accident," and it just as you sit down and reflect, it's amazing the doors that God opened in my life and allowed me to walk through.
I want to know why it was important to you to finish your degree, because you didn't need it. Your career had been successful already. Nobody was going to interview you and ask where you graduated for college. Or if you had the piece of paper. You probably knew a lot of the stuff you're learning in the classes.
Oh, I could have taught some of the classes. I could have taught some.
I would have hated to be your professor, teaching you about applied personal finance. But why was that important?
There was a hole. There was a hole that needed filling. You heard me say the only thing in my life I started that I didn't finish.
Yeah.
When I was 7 years old and came home and said I want to be a Boy Scout. Cub Scout. My dad said, fine, but that means you're going to earn your Eagle Scout. And
you got to go all the way through.
I didn't even know what that meant. And he explained that to me, and I went, okay, I can do that. Well, little did I realize 6 months later, all my buddies that joined Cub Scouts with me had already quit. And here I am. There was one friend that was still a scout. He was not he was a close friend. He was a good friend. My mom buried her boot in my rear about 50 times saying, get in there and work on that merit badge. And I got my Eagle Scout. It was just one of those things I did. So I had this hole that needed filling.
So I want to wrap up this section just by asking you have been in a position to be an entrepreneur, to manage a very successful bank, to work on a daily basis with local people. in ways that are far beyond the ways that I interact with local people. I mean, those banking relationships are deep. And I wonder, like, what you can tell me, what you've learned about the people here. Because I know, like that's one of the probably reasons that it was a little bit tricky to sell Happy, is that a bank in Arkansas doesn't necessarily know the area. You don't know, are they going to deal with people the same way that we deal with people? Will they know the Panhandle vibe and be able to work with that? Like, those are the uncertainties of selling. And so, like, what have you learned about the people that live here, the people that work here?
I ran across maybe 5, 6 people that I just didn't want to bank. They were grouches. They were self-centered. Not necessarily. Most of them had character flaws. Were not people of integrity. And I met thousands of people, and I only can sit here and think of maybe 5 or 6. My point is, 99.9% of the people that I met are really, really good people. I'm cocky as I can be. I pray I'm not arrogant. Mm-hmm. There's a vast difference. And part of my persona is I'm going to treat you with respect. You're one of God's creations just like I am. God places a great deal of value in you. Who am I to not do the same? So we're going to work on just a trust between the two of us. I think once you establish that's who you are, and that's how I'm going to take care of you, that's how I'm going to treat you. I think it was with my employees. I knew we did have 18, 20 values. And when the book was written, I did a lot of public speaking about it, and people would say, well, which one's the most important? And I'd say they're all 18. If I don't follow one of them, well, if I'm a liar regarding one, am I a liar regarding all? One of my favorite stories, if I may, is one of the first values we came up with is we will never turn an employee down for a day off if it's a family event. And I mean, we really push that. Family comes first every time. And I don't know, 12, 15 years into it, one day a teller calls me. She said, Mr. Hickman, you lied to us. My husband's granddad is turning 85 in a few weeks. They live in Kansas. And we're going to have a giant party. We need to take off on Friday to be able to get there on Saturday. You can't fly into where we're wanting to go. I asked for the day off, and my boss told me no. So I get on the phone. I called the head teller. I said, what are you doing here? And she said, Pat, we're a small branch. I've already given 2 tellers that day off. And by this time, we had maybe 250 employees. But when we sold the bank, we're pretty close to 1,000. But we had probably 250 employees. And I said, you're telling me with 250 people, you can't find someone? I'll come work the window. But if you turn this lady down, you've just made me and every other officer of this company, every director, a liar. We don't jack around on this stuff. Give her the day off. Find somebody to work that window, and if you can't, call me. I will be there. You'll be out of balance for 6 months if I work that window, but have me come. And that was a reputation that we had. And I think that if you treat, that's an employee, if you treat customers, stockholders that way, you're going to win.
Hey Amarillo is supported this week by Pestex Pest Control. Ben with Pestex sprays my house every few months. He was just here last week, and I use Pestex because they're locally owned. They use pet-friendly products. Most importantly, they don't have a one-size-fits-all approach. Ben comes to my door. He asks me if I've seen anything he needs to work on, and I say, yeah, there's been a lot of spiders lately or whatever, and he goes to work. He evaluates every customer's pest problem and finds the best way to solve it. To get in touch, call or text Pestex at 806-433-8841 or look up Pestex on Facebook or Instagram. This episode of Hey Amarillo is supported by Amarillo Habitat for Humanity, which works with families across the city to provide an alternative path to homeownership. Earlier in the summer, Amarillo Habitat handed over the keys to its 120th local home. This is not a free giveaway. It's a process, and it includes financial stability courses, volunteer construction, sweat equity from the families involved, reasonable down payments, and no interest loans. Strong and stable homes help build strong and stable communities. And there are a lot of great nonprofits in Amarillo, but Habitat's the only one that focuses on affordable home ownership. It helps people help themselves, and that's why I love this organization. You can learn more at AmarilloHabitat.org, and thanks to Amarillo Habitat for Humanity for sponsoring the podcast. Okay, I'm back with Pat Hickman. Pat, this is part of the show I call 8 Straight. 8 Straight is sponsored every week by Panhandle Plains Historical Museum in Canyon. I should probably say both of us are on the board of trustees. So it's, you know this, it's the largest history museum in Texas, and its Pioneer Town collection includes a bank as it would have looked like in the late 1800s or early 1900s, with a floor inspired by the tile floor of Canyon's First National Bank around 1908. So you can see that. You can actually step into that bank at Pioneer Town and learn more at panhandleplains.org.
The fixtures actually came out of the bank in Panhandle.
Really? Panhandle?
Yes, and if you look, there is carved into the front of each of those teller windows is a pan with a giant long handle on it.
Okay.
So that's
I need to look at that more closely then.
Yeah.
All right. First question, when you think of Amarillo Canyon 10 years from now, what do you hope for?
Water.
Mm-hmm.
Worried about water. I mean, we're one of them. We have our own well. We have 3 acres just north of Canyon where we live, and there's a lot of wells being put in all the time. And I think our city leaders in both Canyon and Amarillo have done a great job of planning for the city's future in water. I really worry about the rural landscape and the smaller towns. Agriculture still the biggest industry in the Panhandle, and worry about that. So water.
I think about that problem, and I always just hope that people smarter than me are coming up with solutions for that. I really don't know. I know it's a conversation we're having, but I
think we're in the same boat. I hope the same thing.
I hope there's some smart people working on this. Okay, other than wind, what does this area have too much of?
Well, right now, heat.
Yeah.
These 100-degree days every day are just brutal. Mm-hmm. And outside of that, I really can't say what's something we have too much of. We have too many people. Here's one. We have too many people that don't know that the left lane is for passing only.
Mm-hmm. I can agree with that, especially with the now with the road construction. We don't have a lot of left lanes that remain.
But once they're back, come on, guys, pass the car, then move over to the slower lane.
Okay, what does this area not have enough of?
I'm the glass half full guy.
Okay,
we have some of the greatest arts in the world, but a world class museum, world class symphony orchestra. You just the various things that we have, the Amarillo Museum of Art. Amarillo is so fortunate that a lot of people don't realize we're an island. Mm-hmm. 4 hours to Oklahoma City, 4 hours to Albuquerque, 6 hours to Colorado Springs / Denver, mm-hmm. 7 hours to Dallas. Now you pass through Lubbock perhaps and some others, but they're the same. I had a good friend who was active in banking, government relations, who lived in Colorado. He caught all of his flights out of Amarillo. It was easier for him to come to Amarillo. Our medical center talked to the folks in the med center of how many people come here from Colorado, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. It's an island, and therefore we've got a lot of stuff that other communities our size don't have. So that's why it's hard for me to answer.
Okay. I'll let you off on that one.
Edit that
that's
one.
That's a good explanation. Okay. Other than Happy, what's your favorite small town in the Panhandle?
My hometown. I love Canyon, Texas.
Okay.
Canyon's a jewel. We were very fortunate to have branches in several towns in the Panhandle area. As far as just pretty, you got to give a shout out to Canadian. Mm-hmm. Beautiful, and they've done a really good job. I hate that they were hit so hard by the wildfires. But it's just a pretty town up there. But Canyon holds its own. So blessed to have a university. Talk about a clean industry. Yeah, it's wonderful. But you can't beat Canyon.
Okay, what's your favorite local restaurant?
It's a toss up. We love the Joe's. Macaroni Joe's, Joe Taco. We love those, but we like Public House. Those are probably threes. Pepito's is another pretty good Mexican food restaurant.
They're in Canyon.
Yeah. But Mac Joe's and Public House, when it's date night, that's where we end up going a lot of times.
Okay. What's the most underrated aspect of living in this area?
I'm proud. We are still the belt buckle of the Bible Belt. And we still fear God. We still have strong faith. We have great churches. And my wife, I joke, my wife and I are church hoppers. We belong to 3 churches in our almost 50 years of marriage. We followed our kids. We for the first 17 years of our marriage, we went to West Cliff Bible Church here in Amarillo. For 17 years, we went to First Baptist Canyon. They had a phenomenal youth group that all 4 of our children were involved in. In fact, our younger son that does not live here is a pastor because of a lot of the training he got there. But then all my children live in Amarillo, and the one is a pastor, was a pastor at Hillside for a while. So now that's where our kids are. That's where we're going.
Okay.
But great churches in Amarillo, Texas.
One of the jokes that people make a lot when I ask what we have too much of is that they talk about bank branches and churches and convenience stores. And so you're already advocating for 2 of those things, right?
That's right.
Being plentiful in Amarillo. So there's always different perspectives, right?
That's right.
What's your favorite local nonprofit?
Hope Choice, the work that they do with crisis pregnancies is phenomenal. What Candy does there, and Faith City, helping the poor and the wanting and the needing and the homeless, etc. Both are just rock star organizations that not only do they provide the physical support, but the spiritual support as well. And we love those 2 organizations. The secular, I love the Panhandle Plains Museum, as we've already discussed. My wife and I have had season tickets to the Amarillo Symphony longer than we've been married. We actually got season tickets while we were dating. Okay. And still love that as well.
All right, good. All right, last question. When was the last time you visited Paladura Canyon?
A few months ago. My toy is a 2005 Cadillac XLR, which it's a convertible. They called it the Cadillac Corvette because it has the Corvette engine in it, a 2005 model. And I love to find a cool afternoon and say, honey, let's drive the dirt roads. Let's go down the canyon. Let's just tool around a little bit. And so that's still love that. Okay.
That concludes the 8 straight questions, but I like to close by asking my guests to endorse something. So what's one thing you would like listeners to know about or to experience?
I think a lot of people take the Amarillo Symphony and the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum for granted. And that we are so blessed to have those 2 organizations here. One of the things I'm very proud of is the Happy Holiday Pops concert that takes place every year, and that, thank goodness, that our current ownership agrees, and I think you'll see Happy doing that perpetually, I hope. That's become a tradition all in itself, to the point that they're now going to add another performance of it.
Right, yeah, I saw that.
I'm biased toward those 2.
Yeah, those are both great. I can co-sign on that. Pat Hickman, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Love your podcast, by the way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Learn a lot about what's going on in the Texas Panhandle, so thanks for doing it. Keep it up.
Absolutely. And that concludes the episode. I want to say thanks to Pat for the interview. Thanks also to SKP Creative, Pestex Pest Control, Amarillo Habitat for Humanity, and Panhandle Plains Historical Museum for supporting the podcast. And as always, thanks to Angelina Marie for editing the show. Thank you for listening. Hey Amarillo exists on a weekly basis because of listeners like you and the local people who support it financially. Hey Amarillo's executive producers include Josh Wood, Wes Reeves, Jason Burr, Patrick Burns, Katie Linger, Corey Burns, Cindy Graham, and Barbara and Jim Witten. This has been episode 367. My name is Jason Boyette, and I'll see you next week.